Please.
Yeah.
So, if you're listening to the podcast right now, you know that I'm here with Brooke Thomas and our special guest, Jeannie Zandi, who we're so happy to have here. And gosh, as I was thinking about this interview, and Brooke and I get on the phone right before we ever do an episode, and we kind of talk about what's up and what's happening. I was reflecting to Brooke how nervous I was, right? And I thought, well, this is perfect that I'm nervous because it's really in alignment with stuff that's been rising in my life. And so, something that's been on my mind as I imagine sitting here with you two ladies is um, this real dance I've been doing back and forth with inadequacy. You know, I've had some experiences lately. I had this crazy dream uh, before I went on retreat in Sedona, and the dream somehow was like all night I kept looking for a separate self. I don't know how the contents of the dream were, but I woke up remembering I couldn't find one. And there were like these hours after I was on the plane where just this sense of connection and kind of a sweetness was so present. I felt so open. And I land in Sedona and I meet up with the man I'm going to do the retreat with. And he's kind of a confident personality and we're on his turf and I don't know him especially well. And all of a sudden I notice like as if everything's closing, and I'm running the soundtrack of self-doubt over and over again. And I've been noticing this a lot lately that there are these moments where some sense of expansion happens. Even at a moment not too long ago where I had a kind of spontaneous movement towards self-love, right? I could see my sick body and hold it in my arms. I'm dealing with some health issues. And then followed by this kind of collapse, this rising of fear and self-doubt. So Jeannie, I was listening to a show that you had did with someone. The show was called Never Not Here. I don't even know
Oh,
how long
yeah.
ago that was. I didn't look. I don't know if that was recent. But
That was probably almost a decade ago, I think.
wow,
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah, yeah,
But you said something like we're running from a very deep feeling that something's inherently wrong with us, that this
yeah,
being isn't enough and we have to supplement it with our will. And I think I can speak for Brooke and myself to say that we've been noticing that a lot. And I thought it would be a good place to maybe start a conversation.
yeah. And what do you wonder about it?
Well, I guess a number of things. It's like, I've been at this exploration and in these moments of deep contact with myself for a long time now. And then there are moments where I could really sit in knowing, well, maybe not knowing, just experiencing this sense of deep worth. Like the way I find mountains worthy or trees, it's like a simplicity of
Yeah,
being. And then all of a sudden there's this contracted state and
yeah.
there's all this fear and sometimes I wonder, why is it so scary to awaken to your true nature, given that it's so simply easeful when you're there? And why does that
Yeah.
keep happening? That expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction.
Yeah, yeah, I think I can speak to that. Um, well, first off, I think we have to look at a primary confusion, which is that there is a someone, this self-concept that there is a someone who can be done or not done, in good shape or not in good shape, that we could have confidence in or not have confidence in. And when we look at things that way, we're actually looking at things through a contrived lens instead of how things actually are. So if we drop out of an idea of ourselves and sort of down into a kind of a simple flow of presence and sensation, we can say that when we feel expanded, there's a certain direct experience that has an effect on the body. Somehow we open to something beyond a limited sense of self, and our body actually is fed with spiritual energy. And it's soothing and it's yummy. And fear goes away. We forget creature concerns, like, how am I doing? And do you love me? And are you going to leave? And where's my food? And, that kind of stuff. And so I would say that within that, we also attribute rising emotion or our feeling states to certain things. So, as you say, why would we feel that awakening was scary? And what I want to invite us to consider is that when we open, when we are in, let's say, new turf, new terrain, when we are in a situation that is either new, we're not sure how it's going to go, that sort of thing, it will touch the places in the creature that are interested in survival. We're not sure we're going to make it through the moment where this bedazzling teacher is acting all confident,
Mm-hmm.
and in that something young, something old gets touched, a level of fear, a level of anxiety. And what I want to say is that man or awakening are not inherently scary. It's just that when we move outside of our sort of reference points of familiarity, we encounter or touch the things in us that are not digested yet. Mm-hmm. And so it's that old fear is rising rather than that awakening or this person is scary. Mm-hmm. And so in that, there isn't, I sort of want a little, here we are. Can you see my little squirrel?
Yes.
Okay. La. Here's me moving through time. This is the overlay. Here's me. There's time. And I'm moving through time, getting better and better and better. And so I want to take that away. Bye-bye. And just say, to forget before, to forget after, and to just simply notice the what's rising in this moment, because what is always continuously there is this spacious presence. It just is, and different flavors rise in it. And when we see ourselves or ourself that way, then there's just a hello moment that is bringing something new and potentially undigested from the body for me to meet, without necessarily making a me out of it that's either doing better or doing worse or still insecure. I hear people a lot of times, they'll come to my meetings and they'll say, I'm still this, I'm still that, as though, right? As though, we start out a mess, and then when we get there, we're all cleaned up, and then we know we got there. Yeah. And what I want to do is take that little squirrel. Where'd he go? He's I want to just woo and hang out below that level in just what is there for me to meet in this moment. And it's through actually touching those places, not necessarily as a me, but touching those places, noticing the creature of the body is activated because the creature believes that her survival is somehow threatened in this moment. Generally, our survival is not threatened in many of the moments that the creature is acting like it is. This is just something old, something young, from a time when we felt like we were tiny and whatever it was that was coming at us was overwhelming.
For me, like next kind of layer of that same inquiry, it's been quite a year And I've been in that place of like ragged nighttime terror. And I can do all of the things, like I can realize I'm in my bed, I'm in my safe home, but it's that kind of animal terror, early morning, the wee hours or really sleep getting quite disrupted. And at some point, I think it would be worthwhile to actually have you define dark night, because that's so much of your, you've been so helpful with teachings on what a dark night actually is and how to work with that. And, those are the moments where I can't quite figure out how to interact with that. I mean, I know I'm being hooked by it when I was telling Vanessa before the call, when I hear the internal voice go, this is just my life now. Like there's kind of resigned despair. I know that's actually a little bit of it wakes me up out of it, because I realize that's not true. And the closest I've gotten is the ability to be like this, this is happening, and to try and stay close to it in the present moment and realize that, it's not always present. But I guess like my little scared primal self wants to ask, like, the question really, when I'm like, what is the question really? Yeah. The question really is, how do I make it stop? Which of course is exactly what you were just saying. When will this be over? When will this be done? Like, how do we interact with that part of us that's like, seriously, when will this be over? And I realized that that's like what you were just saying, but I'm curious, like, if there's another layer of that when it is really just that very raw.
Yeah. Let me ask you, what is the most unbearable part of that experience? What's unbearable?
What's unbearable?
What feels like you just cannot?
The mental, like the words that come with it, if words come with it, are I'm dying, like I'm going to die, I'm dying. And it's just so physically uncomfortable in the body, like gut level, terrified. And, I guess I would say like, it is when I expand it out and just decide, oh, this is what life is now. Like this is going to last forever.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So I've made a study of fear, because fear was really quite a huge part of that dark night of the soul experience that I had. And there's so many flavors of fear. There's sort of a low-grade anxiety that many people just walk around with, just kind of a nervy, speedy sort of thing. There's fear that spikes when we hear something, and without even thinking about it, something in us goes, yikes, like we're about to get on stage or something like that. There's nighttime terror, like you're talking about, that just you wake up and it's not even, you haven't even had a single thought you can trace, and the creature is just terrified. And then there's also the way that the mind takes that base level of terror that we're experiencing and fans the flames of it. Fans the flames of, this will always be so, as you said, oh great, et cetera.
Well, this one, my life is now. Yeah.
This is a life sentence. It will take the moment where something is presented, and it will turn it into like a timeline of doom, basically. And that adds to the level of terror. So there's a level of terror that is a result of trauma. And most of us, groovy, wholeness, work on ourselves sorts of people, we've had years and years of an emphasis on going into it. Yes. Right? We go into it. We sort of crank our chest open and say, bring it on, be with it. It's like kind of the,
Right. Yes.
Go deep, go deeper, clean it all out, and that whole thing.
Vanessa and I are familiar. Yeah.
How'd you know?
Yes, 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 because I am you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that works for some things, but it doesn't work for trauma. And in the last probably couple years, I've been learning about trauma because I've had some people in my work who have experienced trauma, some who have had various sorts of trauma resolution, and some who are actual practitioners of things like somatic experiencing. And I've learned a lot in the last couple of years about something called a resourcing. And when our system feels so flooded that we feel that we don't have any stability with which to meet something overwhelming, it's not useful to just flood ourselves. Sometimes we can't help the flooding because we didn't ask for it. We're not trying to take a deep dive. It just rises, gets triggered by something. And in those cases, and now we're just talking kind of psychosomatic mechanics right now, you know what I mean? And all of these things exist within our world, just like, knowing how to change a flat tire is useful. Knowing the mechanics of the body and of the psyche are useful. And so in somatic experiencing, clients are taught to do something called resourcing. Are you guys familiar with this a little bit?
I am, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's not the mind, the imagination can be used to resource sometimes, but just tiny things like finding anything in the environment that feels soothing, a particular color on the wall, the feel of a teddy bear, your hands, the way they meet each other, the fuzziness of a blanket, to take attention off of the mind's spinning, and start to put it on the tiny elemental things in the environment that are actually resource to you, that are soothing, that are calming, to start to build in the creature a sense that it has a bit of control and can reach some kind of a soothing place. I find that the creature doesn't really speak thought. And this is why things like New Year's resolutions don't work. You know, the creature has on its side our life energy. Our life energy is behind many of the things that we do, many of the habits that we have, etc. And to try to soothe a creature by mentally telling it things like you're fine and these sorts of things, it's like, yeah, whatever.
For sure, that has been my experience. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I encourage people to do in my teaching is to let attention drop into a felt level. So one's felt experience, and to find resources at that level. So can your body tell that right now nothing's happening to it, that there's nothing piercing your body? How do you know? Can you notice that your arms are intact and your shoulders are intact? You know, things that are very tactile.
Yeah.
Feeling the heaviness of the body in the bed, letting the body move in a way that feels comforting to it, whether it's crawling into a ball or rocking. In other words, turning toward the raw creature and letting the creature sort of tell us what's too deep, what's too much, what's soothing, so that it can sort of find ground. And I don't know, because I've been with people with pretty severe PTSD. This is an edge, I think, of our human research that is, I think a lot of research is coming out about this. A lot of people are applying their embodied intelligence to this question. But I think there are some levels of trauma where it's sort of like, dang, this is how it is, and I don't know what to do. And we have to actually allow that level of things into our consciousness because otherwise we're just giving each other happy little answers while we're all going home at night suffering our butts off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that doesn't work. So I want to acknowledge just how challenging some of these states are as well. And just invite you on an exploration of what the unique resources are for you. I know I have a guided meditation CD that's some pretty opiated guided meditations from the middle of retreats that one of my volunteers snipped, and they're singing Tibetan singing bowls in between. The whole tone of the CD is very dropped in and very soothing. It's like mommy. It's like a recording of mommy, you know? And I know a lot of people who use that CD as one of their resources when they're awake in the middle of the night. I know someone who played it just pretty much all day because it soothed his nervous system in the middle of a dark night. So things like that sometimes you have to get very creative to find the music, the whatever it is. I was at the Denver Aquarium yesterday by accident looking for lunch while I was in the area, and it came up as a local restaurant. And as I was sitting there with one of my students, the fish were just by. I took a little video of the fish and I posted on Facebook, and just the underwater slow quality of the fish tells the nervous system they're there. And so to me, it's coming out of the mental mindset that I must process this, I must brave this, I must meet this, into a kind of more of a tender approach to talking the body down out of its tree, really.
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, because I've been so A plus, student and getting trauma work and being on the path, and just hit this layer where it's like this layer does not play by those rules. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think also we can think, well, let's just have more expansion. Let's just have more God in those places. But I think sometimes there's a time to simply ground, to dig in the dirt, to take walks, to do to hold animals, to spend time at a level of actually supporting the structure before blasting the structure open again.
Yeah. Nature is my drug of choice. I really appreciate that one for sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, this inner tendency to push. I'm listening to this wisdom and I'm thinking, of course, I even know this. I mean, I'm a psychologist by training. And yet, as I'm identifying a little bit with what you're saying, Brooke, I'm thinking, yeah, how many moments in my life I've been like up against that place. And instead of just this kind resourcing, you go, let me go deeper. Let me dig in. How do I get better? And I think it's maybe fueled by that thing you pointed to before for me, that sense that, gosh, Jeannie, I always hoped that there was some enlightened state where I would just be better. I really did. I wanted that for some reason when I was young, like some arrived here state where I didn't have all of these feelings. And it's funny, as I've matured to recognize that in myself. But now I can kind of trace those like subtle whispers of like, okay, there's still a little, how do I get better? When will I be better? That kind of echoes through the system as if there's an end goal. And I have so purposefully tried to move as if there wasn't an end goal, because once you start meditating and you sit with teachers, and Brooke and I have sat with a number of different really amazing teachers, it's easy to get a thought process, right? This is an awakening path, aka there's a goal. I'm going to awaken. And I've tried almost mindfully to not have a goal, but there it is, and then it
Well,
just becomes, go ahead.
and and even trying to not have a
Yeah.
goal, we're in it again, right? We're in
Yeah.
it again, we're in it again.
Totally.
And honestly, we are conditioned from birth. We are absolutely conditioned to reject the present, to turn everything in the present into signs that we are a good me or a bad me and need work. And then that our salvation, the solution to these bad feelings or this scary, whatever it is, the solution is down the road. This is just something that we drink with our mother's milk in this culture. It's so deeply conditioned, and it's conditioned into the creature aspect of us so skillfully and repetitively and under duress that it actually has its roots in the creature system, in the creature's survival system, so that we deeply learned that our survival depended upon getting better, and our meanness and the health of our meanness was linked to our survival, just like Pavlov's dog had saliva, you had steak and a bell linked together. This is the evil genius of conditioning, of our conditioning, is that crazy things like being right or being wrong is actually linked to our survival.
Yeah.
And so it mercy on us and mercy to the humanness in us. We were good students. And we learned this was the available wisdom of all of the people around us. And it surrounds us in the entire culture, this way of being. It's a way of orienting to ourselves. It's a way of orienting to time. It's a way of orienting to solution. A complete rejection of things as they are in this moment. And then using whatever's in the moment to get to a better place. And it's as much of a game. It's a game, just like a child will say, "You can't see me," right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a total invented game in space that has nothing to do with reality, nothing whatsoever. And yet we learned it, and we learned it so deeply that it's below our conscious mind, just kind of running. And so what can we do? What we can do is simply notice it. There it is again. There it is again. Mercy. And now breath and ground and noticing noticing the fuel behind it. And the fuel behind it is always some measure of experience that we feel we can't be with. So we do this with longing, we do this with pain, we do this with insecurity, we do this with thoughts of insufficiency, we do it with anything that isn't, we even do it with positive things. So if we get a little hit of yum, then we'll start thinking about how to get more yum, right? Mm-hmm. And we'll actually leave the experience of being saturated in yum, our actual life right here, we'll leave that for the potential of more yum down the road. It's completely insane.
I just had a birthday last week, or anyway, recently, and I had cupcakes, and I totally caught myself like eating a cupcake and looking forward to the moment when I could remember back that I had enjoyed a cupcake, like, and totally was not. It's like I'm eating this delicious chocolate cupcake, and all I can think is like I want it to be over with so I can remember how nice it was. Like to catch it was so. I mean, there's some moments where you're like, wow, we're really insane,
Yes,
and all the time,
and dearly insane, like absolutely innocently, dorkily, and dearly insane. You know what I'm saying? So we don't have to apply the whip to our foolish selves. We only have to notice that it seems as though foolishness absurdity is just simply part of the human package,
Yeah, I feel like that's the trickiest thing in myself, for sure, in the world, in clients that I work with, how quickly we move to shame. And I think one of the things that I've loved so much about your teachings, all your articles on your website have been nectar for me in this last year. Like I've reread and reread and reread, like they just soothe my soul, because there is so much tenderness, so much affection, really, for what we are. And I've seen in so many spiritual circles and personal growth circles that there's just this very easy way that we turn it into very quickly, like what we're getting wrong, or like, oh, that crazy ego, doing its crazy bad thing.
Bad. A couple things that you guys have mentioned so far, just in talking, points to me to the way that our culture and the way that our upbringing and the way that all of our approaches to things are heavily influenced by the yang imbalance in our culture. And when I say yang, the imbalanced yang, the unhealthy yang, so that we, and actually the approach, the energy of yin and the energies of healthy yin and healthy yang, we almost don't even know. And when we see them embodied, they look very fascinating, because there was a friend told me about a teacher of the Aikido, the founder of Aikido, Morihei Ueshiba, that one of his students who had woken up in the process of studying with Ueshiba, and I have Aikido as a historic practice in my own life. This man was talking to one of his students that before he died, he really wanted to pass on this awakening and this wisdom, and part of his heartbreak was that he had not been able to. And one of the things he said when he was trying to describe it was, it's all about yin and yang. It's all about the appropriateness of these two energies. And as life energy moves into the body and is on earth, it moves in this beautiful dance of receptivity, tenderness, softening, being, stillness, dying, sinking, and then a rising up of a sort of holy impulse to move, to take a stand, to stand for something, to create structure. And you can see this in nature as things in the winter are still, and then something moves and sprouts and grows and then returns. Well, in our culture, we are darn near completely ignorant of yin. We have in the feminist movement, in the goddess spirituality movement, there's lots of exploration that's been happening and reviving of the words and the value of yin. But even when we talk about yin, we're often talking in a yang way. We often bring yin to the table on a yang plate, in a way. And part of the sort of, the dark night is a force feeding of yin. All of the false yang just brings suffering. Every time you try to get it up, every time you try to will something, every time you try to move forward, you're cut down. The amount of suffering that rises, the amount of falseness. And so again and again, you're forced back into silence. You're forced back into receptivity. St. John calls it a passive night. And by that, he says there's a time for sort of active seeking, when you pray, when you meditate, when you do good works, and you're basically courting the holy. And in his paradigm, once you've courted the holy sufficiently, like lay back, babe, and take it, is how the next phase goes. And it's entirely a passive night. In other words, what is required of us is to submit to a deep transformation that takes place in silence, outside of the worldly vision. And any attempt to try to master it or get yourself neatened up, etc., is just cut down. And there is here such a deep embodied adoration for the energy of yin. And I feel that a lot of our illness and a lot of the chronic fatigue and a lot of what's happening on the earth has to do with our alienation from this deep potential for us to rest in a kind of a dropped down, nobody going nowhere darkness, so to speak. And so when we say, well, where did I come up with this way of hurling myself at the latest emotion to dig it out? Well, that's our model. Our model is a model of the sun god, the heroic one. Within this model, the ideal woman sprouts from Zeus's head fully armed, right? And we all know that's not how babies are born. But in an over-yang culture, that's what we like to think. There was no baby, there was no poop, there was no diaper. She just sprung from my head with armor, kind of thing. And this is woven through so many of the ways that we are. We are yang poisoned and yin starved. And without yin, there can be no healthy yang, because yang rises out of yin pure. It rises out of a resting in zero in a pure motion, free of will, free of agenda, free of destination. It rises in a very similar way that children say, why did you do that? They say, because. It rises with a because. There's just a wholesome sense. This is righteous in this moment, this movement, because. So that was kind of a lot. I'll pause because I forget even where we were now.
That's beautiful. So helpful. And you're pointing at something that, well, in some ways it's related to something that we talk about a lot. Our favorite mantra on the show is trust your life. And that allows for, ideally that you are willing for the yin and that you're also willing for healthy yang, like what arises as opposed to what are you going to push and make and grab at, which is certainly historically my way of being in the world. My journey has been a lot of like coming face to face with compulsive striving. So to let that go and then discover like, well, things still do get made, things still do happen, but it's like there are these sweet moments where every once in a while something actually does itself, which is what's happening all the time. But if I can just let it have enough of its own space, I can trust my life and things will emerge that way.
Brooke, what's that Adyashanti quote that's something like you start chasing God and then God starts chasing you? Do you remember it?
Yeah, I can't remember it because it's a little bit longish, but basically that, that there are these, on the spiritual path, there's this whole trajectory where you're chasing God and it's going to be so great. And then it switches and God is chasing you. And it's like, oh, what did I get myself into? What's happening here? Yeah.
Almost reminds me of that sensation when you were pointing to at St. John. At first it's all about your courting and your adoration, but then it's, lay back. And there's this phase. It's funny how the conceptual mind works because it's so sneaky. I'm in my 40s and I keep peeling back layers of concept that I somehow unconsciously perceived as ground, like, yeah. Oh, I know how to be with the darkness and I know how to be with yin and like, that's great. And then I realized like, as I keep peeling back, well, I've developed some ability to tolerate myself is what's happened. And then I'm like, okay, that was long enough. Now let's move to the positive part, right? And it's just kind of amazing to keep peeling back these layers. I think almost shaky feeling, as over the last few years, some of the conceptual reality that I took as ground, even that. Like the things I believed were healed in myself that later come back to reveal themselves. And it just points to, for me, as somebody who's been, in the field of psychology and spirituality for the better part of my life, I guess how deep this creature self really goes. Like, when we talk about conditioning, especially in psychology, it just makes it sound like a mental construct, right? Like we use the word story as if like I have a mental idea.
I know.
It does not
I know.
say it, does it?
No, and I know. And when I was in hell, I definitely attended my share of satsang, and the whole aspect of the creature seemed to be missing. It did seem like conditioning was just, if you just stopped having that, if you could just find that one thought and then have this realization inside of that one thought, it would all go away. That somehow we're thinking wrong or something. Yeah, and it doesn't recognize the deep, even pre-verbal conditioning that babies basically are taking in the felt context of separation, the felt context of what shame feels like, what something is wrong and bad here. That kind of just ground out of which the dysfunction rises is, like you say, it's almost like a ground level. We mistake it for reality.
Yeah, it feels like sometimes I would almost say like the fabric, like in your bones or in your cells, like something, it feels more akin to something structural than just a thought, a nice thought that you're attaching to. And I had an experience this weekend. I went to the SAND conference, speaking about fear, and I sat with Rupert Spira. And when he spoke about, resting in the essential self, it all felt so natural and so easy. Like, yes, here I am. I'm here, And I thought, why does it feel so easy? And then at times you feel like, oh, I'm going to die if I let go, right? Like, where's the fear coming from? So I rose and I raised my hand. I didn't think he'd even call on me. He did. And my fear was jumping out of my chest because he acknowledged me. I might say something stupid or who knows. And, I asked this question about fear. Why does this feel so natural and so easy and so like organic? And yet, teachers speak about fear. I'm feeling fear. And he had me explore the nature of that moment and, go deeper into my body and where is the fear and go deeper. And of course, I couldn't find a self that was having the fear, And that was a beautiful experience, it was kind of a wonderful pointing to. But at the same time, it almost makes it sound like, so if you just keep doing that, there's no fear there, And that was just interesting to me. Like, how can I make sense of this? Because on another level, it feels like the constrictions and the no is somehow woven, somehow part of the foundation.
Yeah, and we have to be cautious again as we get into how do we master this? How do we master this and make it go away?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And for a moment, built into every one of these questions is a deep kind of a golden opportunity to allow oneself to be utterly mastered. Like for a moment, to just sit in, I don't know how. Mm-hmm. Life flows like this, and I'm not the boss of it. Just for a second, to be humbled by what visits. Before we try and do anything with it, with our little mastering minds, you know? Like, I, in an attempt to describe the elements of the space that I hold when I'm working with people, I came up with a list of aspects that turned into a felt inquiry tool, which is different than a mind level inquiry tool. It's really using felt experience. And one of the pieces that I invite people to do as they turn toward their experience, you know, acknowledge the holy, notice their felt experience, explore their felt experience, is to notice the attempts to master. And the attempt to master is so subtle. It's just a slight stepping up out of the experience to master the experience. And it first starts with a tiny little leaving. So we leave kind of being immersed in the flow of presence and sensation, which is kind of the ground level of living, right? It's like I'm here and it's like this. Like below the mind, there's just ising, right? And then there's this slight stepping away from it to look at it, a slight stepping up into the mind to then do something with it, whatever it is. And that is the beginning of the leaving. That's the beginning of the splitting in two. That's the beginning of rejecting the holistic, vibrating presence sensation collage that we are, to do something to it, to get somewhere. Now we're going somewhere, and there's our squirrel again, and we're in fallacy land. And so what I find with a lot of questions that I get is that there's always two ways we can go. We can point someone back to what's rising in this moment. So when you notice the fear, there's fear there, then there's maybe a desire for the fear to be gone. And so there's a pointing back to, okay, hang out in the fear. Now notice the quality of, I hate this. Let that be here. Plumb the depth of the moment, because out of that fuel, out of that ground is the essential leaving. We're at the scene of the crime, so to speak, there, you know? Mm-hmm. And then on the other side, there is and here's what you can do later, which is sometimes useful. You know, if I tell you now how to change your flat tire later, because you know you're going to head and go be with your car and you don't know how to change a flat tire, that can be useful. That's more at the level of mechanics, skills. But the essential inquiry is to keep seeing through this guy, falling back below the grasping to get somewhere or solve something, into the essential discomfort, the essential no. It should not be this way. I will not submit to this. I will be solving this. Thank you very much. And it's not like there's anything wrong with solving things. You know, when my necklace is tangled, I like to untangle it. You know, when it stubbed my toe and it's bleeding, I like to put a Band-Aid on it. But if the context under which all of our minor mechanical applications in life, if the context doesn't include surrender to a power greater than ourselves, so to speak. When I say ourselves, I mean this little sense of ourselves. If it doesn't include, yes, master, whatever you wish, and I will do what I can, then we're moving from delusion, separation land, and our action is coming from an attempt to basically be a God in the funky way, than to surrender to God and know ourselves as that.
Wonderful.
I know. I'm going to be bathing in that for a while.
That's one of those little rants that will need to rewind and maybe listen to a few times because
many times,
so much. Like,
many
what?
times, and keep catching the mastery, fix it, do it right movement.
Yes, and this. So there's a level of witnessing that's great. We can witness our mind, we can witness sensation, we can notice awareness, we can sit as awareness. But if this little fellow, this little energetic fellow, it's an energetic phenomenon in space that just rises up in basically, I'm out of here, and now I'm going to master here and get somewhere better. That little, you can see it. Just as you meditate, you can just watch that little sucker. It's like la, la, la. And all of a sudden, whoop. And it's so, I remember being 16, buying 17 magazine, right? And the magazines would always have like the 5 steps to something, right?
Totally. They still do.
and I would get so excited about this. Like I could improve myself. And all of the life energy of my young self could just apply itself to improving something. And there's something in us that's so dear and so innocent and so wants to rise to that occasion over and over and over and over. But that 5 steps to X does not work with God.
It sure does not. Yes.
Well, we've been trying. And so far,
we can say in our experiments,
we keep trying. I always say, disillusionment is such a friend.
Hacked it.
Yes, because either you're total losers, right, or this isn't the method, right?
Right. And
at a certain point, it's easier to turn away from the "I guess I'm a total loser" thought. Yeah,
because it is really subtle. It's actually not subtle as you're describing it. Like I can even catch moments where that's not subtle, but when you're going through it, like Brooke and I did a meditation training with Tammy Simon from Sounds True, if you know her, and Tammy said something like, while we were doing the meditation, now try to actually be there, not like you're writing a HuffPo article in your head about your meditation, but like be in your meditation. And in the moment I caught myself doing just that, like, observing my observation, witnessing my witnessing. And that tendency is rich.
And we're screwed because it just keeps propagating itself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay, now try to be in my meditation. So now here I am trying to be in my meditation. Am I being in my meditation, right?
It's like a hall of mirrors.
So we're screwed and we're screwed and we're screwed. And here enter Yin. Because Yin, it's like the purest action that we have is noticing. It's prior to evaluating, it's prior to trying, it's prior to assessing. It notices. And if you sink your attention into the felt level of things, if you sunk your attention right now into the feel of your hand, for example, and deeper, just noticing every nuance of the feel of hand. It's like awareness and the flow of vibration are a single phenomenon when we completely sink into the building blocks of is. Below all thought and concept about is, there's presence and there's sensation. There's vibration. That's all that there is. We interpret some of that vibration, for example, as a dog barking next door. We interpret some of that vibration as a voice that belongs to that moving mouth, that belongs to that face. We interpret the visual vibration as things, but all of that's interpreted. And at the very basic level below all that, in the tiniest, most basic ground, there is being and vibration. There's presence and vibration. And during that dark night that I experienced, I was driven to this level of things. Because if I tried to get anything going my mind was so insane and the suffering was so thick that it was really literally like being in a sweat lodge where it gets so hot that you're on the ground just like sniffing the dirt. I was forced to this ground level of things because I noticed that when I sunk my attention into this level of things, the suffering would abate just a bit, especially the secondary suffering that was coming from the mind. And it turns out that if we rest in that kind of basic felt vibrational level, our systems are zeroed. If we let gravity win, if we sink down in there, if we forget our lives, our timeline, it's like we are absorbed in here. We are soothed, we are zeroed, we are renewed. And in this way, it's like letting, in a way, ourselves be informed by the wisdom that's kind of carried in this vibration. This is the Sufi Ibn Arabi called this level of things Sophia, the feminine aspect of the holy, as she moves into form, but prior to form, vibration, Shakti, this like energetic level of things. And if you hang out in here for a while, you can start to get like, you just have these stupid grins on your face for no reason, because the ocean takes over your body and soothes it. And even the movement of our bodies, it's almost like our bodies are perched on the edge of a ledge waiting to spring in every cell. When we're interacting with another being, how often are we just so chill, like in the ground of being, just completely sunk down into presence? We're perched on the edge of action. Our bodies literally have been conditioned to not rest in yin. I remember when my baby was born, my daughter, and she was such a little noodle. And, I have very large hands, and I would burp her and my hand would be around her belly and she would just flop over my hand like a little dead child, and then this tremendous burp would come out, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, this child is so yin. She's so floppy. She's so surrendered. But I didn't realize until I gave her first bath. And it was only, when do you give the first bath? Not very, like 2 weeks or something. When I put her in the water and I saw her unfurl like one of those Chinese tea flowers, and it was like, I know this world, I know. And her whole body just synced up with the water. And I realized that in those 2 weeks of being in the air and in gravity and around voices and things, her body had taken a little bit of something into it that wasn't completely, and even having to keep oneself sort of moving in gravity, there's a degree of kind of effort the body goes into. But our bodies learn from the get-go more and more and more readiness, the readiness of a soldier, the holding and the protection of a soldier, readying for the next thing, and then ready to act, ready to speak, perched on the edge in every cell. It's as though they're like cougars in every cell, just ready to pounce. And this physical, like somatic reflection of resting and being. It's surrendering to being, and then letting every single cell in the entire body, in the organs, give into that, just like I'm describing Sophia softening in the water, that the body can actually start to embody this level of yin rest that cuts the roots of conditioned reaction. Because the body starts to realize that it isn't in danger. Like the roots of conditioned reaction have at the base of them, you're in danger. You're in danger if this, nice, shiny spiritual man doesn't like you or approve of you. You're in danger if you say a stupid thing online live. You're in danger, in danger, in danger, in danger. And when we actually start to check and abide, letting every cell get the energetic memo, all is well, 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 then the actual challenges are very different than the conditioned, interpreted through conditioning challenges, where forgetting your brush in the airport. I saw this little boy, he was playing with his airplane. He was totally just lost. He was like 3 or so, lost in his airplane, full absorption, whole body, one piece, his adoration, his airplane, his body, just one. And his mother says in a loud, agitated voice, "Oh my God." Like, oh, and, and he looks up like, where's the dinosaur? Where's Sasquatch? Where's the bomb? Right? Like, what? And his mother says, "I forgot my brush." But the energy of her, "Oh my God," was, "I'm going to die without my brush." He's a little boy learning about the world. I mean, at that moment, he's like, my mother is indeed crazy, or there's something about a brush I don't understand. But this is what we grow up in. We grow up in 3-alarm fire, so that our bodies are not synced up with the actuality of the moment, which is that for each of us in this moment right now, like, there's no good reason for us to not be rocking divine rest. And the only reason that we don't is habit or undigested things. There's some people who cannot get below the level of agitation because of the trauma that their bodies carry.
Sure.
That was beautiful. Yeah. I could feel more divine rest even just taking you in as you were talking then. And I have a lot of different thoughts going on in my head. Maybe because it's a podcast and I want to make sure to include, the interesting things or the important details. But one thing that comes to me, maybe just to share with everyone listening, is how painful it is when you feel not inherently worthy. This kind of conditioning that we're describing, or this structuring of your orientation of self, it's so painful. It's so uncomfortable for me. I hear others describe it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that sense of unworthiness even translates to this cellular level, where I'm actually not worthy to be here in this moment, schmoozing in the yum. Mm-hmm. I'm not worthy of a full breath. I'm not worthy of rest because I have to go get better. I have to go get better to work toward the day when I am worthy of my life, of breath, of divine energy, of beingness, of resting in the magnificence of the moment that we have forgotten because we've been so busily using it to get somewhere else.
Yeah. I remember being in psychotherapy. I was probably about 33, 34 years old, and saying to my therapist, I really feel I have to earn the right to draw breath. I really feel that. And I think sometimes that's happening for us and we don't maybe have that verbalization, access to those words. But, and then even as that released, there were other layers to it of how I may turn against myself. And this invitation to the yin is so interesting. I think Brooke and I have both felt over this last year or two different bodily symptoms. Like I got sick from mold illness, but the implications are chronic fatigue, not being able to move as much, like this giant slowing down of my life.
Yeah.
Right? which is interesting because, of course, in the world of concept, that's terrible. I can't, no.
You can't do the things that earn yourself the feeling that you're a good, productive person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then everything that lays down in the basement that has been fueling all of that activity gets uncovered. And then you.
Yes, that.
And, it's not like it would be so simple if the stuff that rises was just raw sensation, but it actually comes with an overlay on reality. It comes with a projective overlay. I suck. Everything sucks. It actually rises up and projects itself on reality so that we think it's reality. So no wonder we get busy trying to solve it again, because it feels really real. And the world around us is acting like that level of things is real.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, a huge part of healing, is calling bullshit, excuse my language, on the delusional quality, like those delusions. One of the things I say when I teach is I teach people to say, just like when you're drunk and you shouldn't drive, I'm currently under the influence of a delusion. Therefore, I shouldn't have any relationship conversations or make any big decisions. I should immediately take care of this poor ailing creature that is profoundly uncared for in this moment. Mostly we don't pause for it. We think it deserves a whipping and we need to keep at it. And this is where yin comes in again. Yin has mercy. It has mercy for the ugly, mercy for the crawling, mercy for the thing on the wobbly legs, mercy for the elderly, mercy for the sick. There's a mercy for all the stages of being embodied, because it sees the holy everywhere, not just in the full bloom sunshine, but there is an appreciation of how holy energy in this beautiful seasonal organic place called Earth moves and expresses itself. And so there's no more value to a sunny day than a cloudy day, to a full blooming rose or a rose with its petals falling to the ground. No more value to a full horse winning a race, or the little wet foal that has just come out of its mother on wobbly legs. It's tender children.
Brooke, do you have anything you want to add to this? That was really beautiful.
I was just going to say, I think we can probably leave it there. These are beautiful meditations, really, for us to all drop into.
Yeah, I have a feeling a lot of listeners are going to go and download that mama meditation you were referencing.
So right now, I just want to say, because we're conversing, the energy is a certain level, but in the events where we meditate, for 30 minutes, and then there's a guided meditation that's just utterly coming from opiated silence, it's actually even more narcotic.
I'm sure. Well, you don't have to convince me of that.
And that is, it's such a balm to the creature of the body that has taken a beating within separation. The body takes a beating. Separation gets acted out on the very flesh of our bodies as a harshness.
Yeah, I can feel it. Jeannie, do you have any upcoming retreats in 2018? I was looking for myself, besides this talk before, and I don't think your schedule rolled out that far. Is there anything you want to point me to? Let's
see. So I have one at New Year's in Loveland, Colorado at Sunrise Ranch. And that one I think is 6 days long. I have one coming up. It's not in 2018 yet, in Seattle. I think it's the first weekend in December, right after Thanksgiving. And then I have very little planned for 2018. I think I have um, what is in stone? I think the only thing in stone right now is a retreat at Brighton Bush Hot Springs in September.
Okay,
And
that
we're,
sounds delicious.
oh my gosh,
Yeah.
hot water and
Yeah,
presence.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just
I'm
like,
like yin
And
energy and
Jeannie. Yeah.
hot water and
oh,
a circle.
oh, so good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that might be what
yeah,
we need to make happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, so my schedule is on my website, and we'll be filling out 2018 as we usually what we try to do is I do a committed program every year of some sort, whether it's online or in person, and we're sort of trying to form what is that for 2018. The one I'm doing right now is called Holy Essentials, and it's online and 9 months long. Um, and we will almost definitely again do a 30-day online training in the felt inquiry technique in the spring. We do it every spring and fall, and that's just a ball. We have a Facebook group. We have classes with me. We have held space with some of my facilitators, and they self-style their own commitment to exploring the felt inquiry technique, which can have as much yin as they want. And then we have this online community where people share in a very protected way. So people's shares aren't turned into discussions. And the culture within both my retreats and the online communities is so deeply real because we protect that sharing space for people. So we'll undoubtedly be doing, a bunch of retreats in various places, but we don't have them in place yet.
Something yummy. Well, I'll be on the lookout. I'm sure other people may be after this. But it was
Yeah.
really, my heartfelt gratitude for you spending time with us and
Yeah.
opening up this space. It was really, really beautiful to be in.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank
Really
you
a
so
delight.
much. So
Yeah.
sweet.